Hey, Falcon Zero here. Welcome back to my channel. Now today we're going to do another game versus game, but instead of doing two Switch games, we're going to do a Switch game and an N64 game. And if you haven't guessed it by now, we're going to do the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild versus the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Both of these games are nearly perfect, and I feel like we have to compare these games. So with that underway, grab a snack and a drink, and let's see if I can entertain you guys for a couple minutes here. Now the first thing I want to compare in both these games is the music going through these. Now you have the classics in Ocarina of Time such as Zelda's Lullaby, Epona's Song, Saria's Song, Song of Time, Song of Storms. It just goes on in Ocarina of Time. You've just got all of those. When you're running through Hyrule Field was just amazing in that. And in Breath of the Wild, the music is a little bit more subtle and it's not as relevant, I would say, but you get the cool songs when you're fighting a Phoenix or a Lionel or a Stalus, when you reach a new stable. There are references to some of the other songs too in Breath of the Wild. And when you're climbing Ganon's castle, I did think that was really cool music when you were doing that. But for the music, I'm gonna have to give it to Ocarina of Time for just having all these classic songs, and the music was just so like in your face, and it was just so classic in Ocarina of Time, so they get to take the first point there. The next thing I want to talk about is the story for both of these games. Now, in Ocarina of Time, you were born at the end of a war, and then you're looked over by the Great Deku Tree, and you oversleep, and when your fairy shows up, you decide to go kick some ass after that. You go collect 3 spiritual stones, you are sealed away in the Chamber of Sages for 7 years, and then you wake up to see Hyrule is a complete mess. You go destroy some more temples, you're aided by Sheik, who then you really figure out is actually Zelda at the end of the game. Sorry, there's spoilers in this video, but yeah, Ocarina of Time came out in 1998. And then you go defeat Ganondorf. So in Breath of the Wild, we start out as Link, but he was injured by Calamity Ganon, and Zelda took him to the Shrine of Resurrection, and he was sleeping for 100 years. Good thing both these games didn't have a hibernation contest in here. But we wake up and we see Hyrule is completely destroyed. Calamity Ganon has destroyed literally everything. Hyrule looks like complete crap is what it really looks like. There's nothing, people are rebuilding in some areas, but Ganon has done his damage in this game. And the story is you're going through and you're collecting your memories because you forgot what happened 100 years ago. You don't even know anything what did happen. And you're just kind of going like, I'm gonna be the hero and be this guy, and I'm gonna go destroy Calamity Ganon, and I'm gonna rescue the princess because apparently she's still in Hyrule Castle as well. Well, collecting all the memories I did think was a really good thing, and I was at the edge of my seat going like, what happened 100 years ago? Because it was really exciting to get this kind of backstory as you were progressing through the game in Zelda Breath of the Wild. So for the story, I'm gonna give the second point to Zelda Breath of the Wild. And for the third category, I want to talk about the final bosses in both of these games. Now, in Ocarina of Time, you get to climb through Hyrule Castle, and at the end you meet Ganondorf, and you play the infamous volleyball tennis with him, and you go hit him with your sword a few times, and it's a good back and forth. It was actually a really cool fight when you're doing that in the end with Ganondorf. Really epic fight. And then after you beat him with the volleyball tennis, we'll call it volleyball tennis, he falls, and then the castle just starts falling apart, and you have to run down the castle as it's falling and it's breaking, and you have to jump through things, and you have to fight enemies along the way, and of course Zelda gets trapped in fire too because it's Zelda and she has to have something. She's helpless except for when she's Sheik. And then at the very end, when you get to the bottom of the castle though, Ganondorf transforms into Ganon, and then you have another epic fight where it's just like this big circle here and there's fire all around you, and you're fighting Ganon, and you have to go around and whack his tail, and then eventually he falls down and you get to slice his head, and then you stab him in the head at the end of the game with your sword. That was a really cool fight in Ocarina of Time. I had a lot of fun with that. So in Breath of the Wild, we are climbing the castle inside and outside because the castle's kind of broken as well. The whole, Hyrule's broken, so of course the castle's broken. And I thought that was really cool. It was really cool to climb the castle, and you're going inside for some of the parts, you're going outside for some of the parts, and pretty much you get to the top and then you fall down in this little pit here. If you have all the divine beasts, they also like take a shot at Ganon, which I thought that was really cool. And it was a really cool fight, I thought, at the end of the game when you were fighting Calamity Ganon in there. You're in this pit. He was actually a pretty hard fight. You were using your powers that you had if you collected your divine beast. You were using the Master Sword. Hopefully you got that along the way in your journey. But then I was like, okay, what's part 2 of this? Like, I'm pumped or whatever, because most Zelda fights, you always get like a part 2. And then when you go outside, you're on your horse. I was like, this is gonna be cool. What are we gonna do here? And you just shoot Beast Ganon with light arrows, and you run around. I actually wasn't that impressed with the last part of the fight, and I thought it was going to be something more epic, and I was a little disappointed actually. So for the third point, this one's going to have to go to Zelda Ocarina of Time. For the fourth part of this discussion, I want to talk about the dungeons and the shrines. This one's hard because there's so many classic dungeons in Ocarina of Time. Actually, pretty much all of them. You got the Great Deku Tree, Durango's Cavern, Jabu Jabu's Belly, Forest Temple, Fire Temple, Water Temple. That one kind of sucks, but they all can't be winners. Shadow Temple is a freaking torture chamber, and the Spirit Temple, where you go from boy to adult in that temple too. And that was, all the temples were really good in Ocarina of Time. And then you have Breath of the Wild though, and don't really have any temples. You have Divine Beasts, which they're a little lackluster, I consider, of the temples, but they kind of were a little bit, but they weren't the traditional temple on that. And then you had the shrines, which weren't like temples at all. They were just like mini puzzles in there, and any of them could range from like 2 minutes to maybe a couple, like 7 to 8 minutes, depending just what you were doing through each shrine. But there was 120 of those in the game, and at first when I heard that Zelda Breath of the Wild was gonna do that, I was a little bit skeptical, but then after playing through the game, the shrines, they won my heart. I liked it better than the temples. I did. It was weird. I was like, I never thought that would have happened. But for the fourth point on this, I'm gonna have to give this one to Zelda Breath of the Wild. And this next topic here is probably the hardest one that I'll have to come up with, because one, at the end I'm gonna have to pick a winner after this, but changes to the franchise and what they have done for now future Zelda games on top of that. And in Ocarina of Time, we have the very first Zelda game that was in a 3D environment. And you know, you had the classic, you go to a temple, you get an item, you use the item to beat that boss, and then you do a little bit more exploring, and you go to the next temple. And it was just a 3D environment though, and it wasn't this, you know, overhead look. You had a fully 3D Link that was on a 360 playfield. You know, in the day, this almost was considered open world, even though now it's just the 3D game is usually what they call it. But this was open world back in the day. You could go exploring and go find things and just go, you know, like this had never been done before Ocarina of Time, or for a Zelda game in that matter. So it was brand new territory. And for Breath of the Wild, we had an open world experience where if you saw it, you could go there. It's like, I want to see that mountain and I want to go east, do it. Because if you see it in the game, you can go head there and you can go complete it. There was no linearity in this game. You could go wherever you want. If you wanted to go fight Ganon in the very beginning of the game, do it. I don't recommend it. I'm sure someone's beat it though. I'm sure there's someone out there that went and did that though. But that's just the point though, is you can do anything you want in any single order. They had a different thing with weapons in this game. So if you wanted this really cool sword, you might not want to use it on these enemies because eventually it's gonna break. And with all these different changes, it's really hard to pick one on these because I really like what both of these games have done. But for this last category, I'm gonna give the point to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It was really hard to pick between these two games. They're both nearly perfect. I recommend Zelda Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild because they're just so good of games. I was like, it's so hard to really pick these. Neither one of these are really a loser here, except for Ocarina of Time, because I did pick Breath of the Wild over it. But either way, they're both fantastic games. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with my picks. If you like this video, please smash that like button as it really does help out. Subscribe if you're not already. Hit the notification bell to stay up to date with more videos like this. And as always, everyone of YouTube, show me your moves.